All right, everybody, we're going to call the meeting to order. It is 6:34. I apologize for being a couple minutes late. Welcome to the DDA meeting for November 28, 2017. First item on the agenda, you started the video, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. I'm not on my A game today. I'm sorry about that. First item on the agenda is the approval of the
pledge.
Oh, correct. I'm
You're
so
definitely
sorry.
not here.
Yeah, it's been a long day. The pledge leads the flags up that way. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the regular meetings from October 24th of 2017.
Motion to approve the meetings from the regular minutes from the regular meeting of October 24, 2017, provided that they include the changes.
I was going to say, did you make that change?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Next on the agenda is the executive session meeting from October 24th, 2017.
Motion to approve the executive session meeting minutes from October 24, 2017.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I think we have an amendment to the agenda.
Motion to amend the agenda to add under old business the Peachtree Crossing Whole Foods project.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, so we've added that to the agenda. I don't have anything this month for the chairman's report. We changed our meeting for the December month to what day? Do you recall?
I do not recall.
Yes. The week prior that it usually is, which would be December 20th, which is a Wednesday.
Okay.
Same time.
So on December 20th, I will not be here or calling in. Enjoy your December meeting. All right. Next up is the financial report.
If you look in the packet, you will see 12 pages or something of financial information. Really, no significant changes in there. Not much going on through the main account. Would notice, yes, starting on for a couple of accrual basis that show year-to-date. The fourth page, I guess, shows what the operating account is. Currently a total of $112,803 in our operating account. Not much in or out this past month. Under the debt service account, we did have the payments of $24,000 roughly in deposits for rent, and then the payment on the loan of $38,000 and change, $38,750 change on payments on the commercial loan, which has a net decline of about $15,000, so we're taking less than what our payment is on. So that's really the only thing I can draw your attention to. Is there any other questions?
I don't know if this is a question for you or for Adam, but
Thank you very much.
as far as the CPA doing this, is there a way for him to show comparison on the income statement of what the budget was next to it, so we can see corresponding line items? Is that too difficult to ask him?
I don't think so. I'll ask him.
it'd just be interesting to see.
Just next to it.
Yeah, yeah, so you have your income statement on one column and the budget, corresponding budget next to it, so we see, you know, if we went over and look into it.
That'd be a good comparison. Okay, any questions? All right. Next item on the agenda is the town center. We have the development agreement and schedule update. We'll come up and give a summary of where we are on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bob Boyle. I'm a co-principal of the Seven Oaks Company. I met with you all, I think, probably about 6 months ago. My partner, Randy Holmes, is here with me tonight. And then also Andrew Roberts is here, one of our associates. And I appreciate the time here before the authority. Let me give you a quick update on where we've been. As you all know, about 45 days ago, Open Land chose to part ways with their potential assignment here. We were approached by members of the authority and the city about engaging with you. We took up the baton at that point and have begun in earnest kind of working towards several things. One is putting a development agreement in place between us and the DDA. And that is in the process of being reviewed. 2 drafts have been gone back and forth, and Mr. McCrae and our legal counsel are going through that. Second, and more importantly to you, is that we have selected a consultant team to assist us with this process. And we have 4 different groups that we have standing in the ready, one of which Knoll Consulting has representatives here today and participated with during this entire time of interview sessions during the day. But Knoll Consulting, who does market consulting work throughout the United States, they've done a fair amount of work right here in the city of Chamblee and all around Metro Atlanta. We also have a separate hotel consultant with CBRE. His name is Mark Woodward. He's probably the prominent hotel consultant in the Southeast United States. He has agreed to come on our team. We also have, from the master planning perspective, which I think is probably the key, the most important of all these consultants, is Hughes, Good, O'Leary, and Ryan. And I know that Bob appeared to you all first on part of the team of Open Land. Bob and I have known each other for almost 40 years, which is a scary thing to think about. But we have worked together and are very excited about having them join our team. Bob grew up in Chamblee. He was graduated from Chamblee High in 1971. So he knows, and this is a special project for him. He is going to be here tonight. So, and then the last group on this team, did I mention everybody? I think it is. Oh, yeah. We have a special parking consultant because I think as you all have waded into this and through our interviews today with your business owner, with your members of the council, and with other folks, is that one of the biggest challenges for every one of these cities who's looking at a new city center is parking. It's a problem and it's a challenge. It's not a problem, it's a challenge. Chamblee has so many great attributes and it actually has an abundance of parking. But what we've asked this group to do, Park Simple, who is going to be heading this up for us, is to go through an initial survey of the 8 other town centers that have come online here or are in the process of coming online, all around the metro region. Come back and so that we can deliver information to you on the authority so that you all can make good decisions about what we do with parking. Parking requires space, it requires volume, 350 square feet per automobile. How do we do that? How do we pay for it? And so we want to present to you kind of what the market is doing and then give you information that you can base a decision on. The Hughes, Good, O'Leary, and Ryan firm, as you all know, is an excellent firm. I mean, they've done design work on everything from the to major parks around Atlanta and a lot of the great urban places here in the region. So we feel like we've got a great team. We need to get our development agreement put in place. It's in the process of being gone through right now. And our team participated today in the stakeholder interviews along with the shuttle system, the alternative vehicle system that you all are considering for the city. So I'd be glad, Mr. Chairman, to answer any questions that you have or have my team members do the same.
I appreciate you being here. The project scope has not changed. The timeline is pushed back a little bit, obviously. But what we're dealing with now is the legalese of how do we contract with them, how do we bind them for the next 6 months and then even into the future after that. Hopefully we'll have that done very soon. But the project scope itself, I don't think has changed substantially from what it was before. So you all have seen the operative document of how we're moving forward with the project for the next block of time.
Given the timing of the holidays, I assume we're not anticipating kickoff until January.
No, we're well underway right now.
Okay.
I mean, technically, Knoll Consulting, we have not signed our deals with them because we have not signed our deal with you all, but they are here, Hughes Good O'Leary is here, and Park Simple is standing ready to do their work as well. Our goal is to have a finished, approved plan, hopefully, by the authority by the end of May of this year. Next year, 2018.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Right.
The autonomous parking vehicle study, is that what you've already mentioned, or are you going to bring that up?
Well, that,
That's me.
yeah,
That's me. Sorry, I wasn't sure if that was part of it.
no, that's not part of our report.
Okay.
Thank you, David.
Thank you very much. Next is the autonomous vehicle study presentation. That seemed to jump the gun.
Good. All right. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Craig Lewis. I'm an urban designer with Stantec. We're a 23,000 person, 400 office international design company. And we do projects all over the world. One of the reasons why we're involved in this is because the coming revolution that we have going on, the evolution in mobility, is touching every part of our profession. I personally got involved with this project. The image here is actually a project we're working on in downtown Charlotte. We're doing the master planning and architecture and all the other services associated with this project. And I'm going to build 2,500 parking spaces because that's what the market tells me we have to build. And we are doing everything we can using every toolbox, every tool in the toolbox we have to figure out how we lower some of those fixed costs. As every good developer knows, we all hate building parking because it's just sunk cost into it. So it's really kind of started for us, from a planning perspective, just a couple of years ago, understanding that things were changing. And we're sort of designing parking decks as we used to, like, is this thing even going to outlive its mortgage? And asking those questions, and our clients are asking those questions too, so we need to have some really good answers. And it turns out, when you look around at a company that's got 23,000 people, you've got some pretty significant experts that are all part of that. So part of those folks are here in the room today. Where is everyone? So Michelle Orfield is a transit planner, and she is my partner on this project. She's our project manager. Michelle's a transit planner from Victoria, British Columbia. Joel Mann is a transportation planner here in Atlanta. Where's Karush? Karush is waving his hand. Karush is a transportation planner and engineer out of Dallas. Jonathan Garrett. Jonathan is waving his hand. Jonathan is from our Phoenix office and has been working on the transportation, actually on the autonomous vehicles side of that. And Ashley Bonowitz is around the corner. Thank you. Ashley is an urban designer on my team. So we've got people from literally different parts of the globe working on this project and working with you all on it. So the idea is, how can we use mobility and the technology that's changing here to help you with your priorities, help you with the projects you were just talking about and other things that are going on in this area? It all starts with understanding that mobility is changing pretty rapidly. This is Laura Ingalls Wilder, right? So I grew up watching Laura, and I was sort of a little kid watching all those shows. Michael Landon, they're trotting across the prairie in, the horse and what they've got going on. Before Laura died, she not only saw the advent of cars going through her life, she flew on a commercial jetliner to visit her grandchildren in Connecticut from Missouri. So within her lifetime, she saw a pretty dramatic span of change. And we know more and more that that change is happening more and more rapidly. So as she saw a whole lifetime full of change, we're now seeing things happen within generations. And it's all happening largely because of this little funny thing we call Moore's Law. Moore's Law basically says that every 18 months our computing power is going to double in capacity. We are now at a point where the phones you have sitting in front of you are faster and have more capacity than what we use to send men to the moon. And so that ability to be able to leverage that type of technology for all kinds of things that we've been dreaming about for 100 or more years has been pretty dramatic. So in some ways, we're talking about things that we have been talking about for a long time. I dug up a picture not too long ago of a GM advertisement that was showing people being whisked down a highway and everyone's playing cards and no one's driving. That was their view in 1940 something. The technology hadn't come to be able to deliver that, but now we're there. So when we talk about autonomous evolution, it's a natural extension of what's going on. We have a whole generation of people who are growing up not knowing anything other than how to take this screen that you have in front of you and interact with it in 100 different ways. They do not know and get frustrated with dumb screens where it just shows you stuff. They want to be able to interact and have it do things, solve problems, entertain them, and do a lot of different. So our expectations are going to be a lot different. And we combine that with what's going on in driving today. Driving today is an increasingly frustrating task that we all have to deal with. Here in Atlanta, I live in Charlotte. We like to say that we're getting Atlanta's traffic problems that you all have, although so much worse. We're on our way though. By golly, we're going to get there just as quickly as we can. But we know that every year we lose 40,000 Americans to traffic deaths. That number actually has increased from 37,000 in 3 years. So what's happening is that we're seeing more and more people traveling, but we're actually seeing more and more people driving in a distracted way. 64% of all accidents reported by NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, this past year attributed, 64 of all accidents were attributed to distracted driving using our phones. So we know that this is going on. I'm not going to make a sort of a moral judgment of what's happening. I'm just reflecting on this is the trend that we have. And so the reality is that driving is not like it used to be, and it's going to be much different going forward. There are a lot of things that are changing about, the technology is changing about how we're delivering mobility these days. The first of which is we are quickly shifting from the fuel injection engine, which has been powering our vehicles for decades and decades, quite nicely, thank you very much, over to electric. And what's happening is it's basically the cost of the battery. That when I bought my first Prius, everyone laughed like, you're going to have to replace that battery, and it's going to be horrible, and it's going to cost you a fortune. Well, it wasn't a fortune, but it was way more expensive than it needed to be. And these days, that price continues to come down, such that that electric engine now is going to be less expensive in about 3 years than that fuel injection engine. So what's going to happen is, what happens in going into 300 moving parts in that engine, and then the maintenance associated with that is sort of turning the whole industry on its head as we're going to that. And all the manufacturers are moving in that direction. So within the last 3 months, starting with Volvo, all the other folks are basically piling on top and saying, like, yeah, Volvo in 2019, any car you buy from them will either have a hybrid engine or all electric. GM just announced this about 2 weeks ago. Ford made a similar announcement about a month ago. They're all having this conversation. They're all moving in this direction, such that in about 5 years' time, you're just going to be buying an electric car. And this is like standard, like I get air conditioning and I have electric engine. That's just part of what's happening. And the reason why this is happening is because there are some big movers that are causing this to happen. One, the cost of technology is bringing it down. 2, China, California. Second biggest market in the world and the 6th biggest market in the world. Have regulations and leadership such that they are basically dictating this. Interestingly, everyone know who owns Volvo? Chinese. So we're going to see more and more of that investment being made, and so basically, everyone's following suit from there. So that's changing pretty significantly, and Tesla certainly has been all about marketing these days, but they were able to pre-sell 500,000 Model 3s, sight unseen, and still sort of working out the production and delivery side to that. But there's a demand, there's a pent-up demand to buy that. We're seeing the change from car ownership to car sharing and subscriptions. Basically, when we think about car sharing, we think about Uber and Lyft. It's also happening in a lot of other ways as well. As people are, we stopped buying cars a while ago, sort of make that statement, because most of the new cars that are sold today are leases, which means you have the right to drive it for 2 or 3 years and you have to give it back in great condition. So you're basically borrowing it. You're sharing that vehicle and then turn around and do something else with it. And so you get that view of it, and then you get the I drive Uber, or I use Uber, I use Lyft, and there's a lot of other variations to that as well. And basically every car manufacturer that's out there today and every fleet operator has some form of that program going on. So for enterprise, they have enterprise car share. We have Zipcar, another version of that. That's you can get a car and drive it yourself around, in addition to some of these other programs. So these things are changing, and it's, I think, really important to note that Uber has only been around for 8 years. And Uber is worth more than GM. So in terms of world power, in terms of where the money is flowing to, interestingly, they still really haven't figured out how to turn a profit. That doesn't seem to be really important in stock value, but that's all a part of it. I think what's particularly interesting from a behavioral standpoint, from a planning standpoint, is that 20% of all Uber trips are pooled. That means somebody is willing to get in the back seat with somebody they don't know for some period of time, and willing to, save $5 doing it. So they're willingly doing it. It's just sort of global. So in some cities it's higher than others, but we're seeing that trend continue. Actually, that number has been increasing monthly. So we're going to continue to see that. So I think that's really important. And I always share the story of 2 years ago, my wife and I were out in San Francisco. I was out there for a conference. We took 12 Uber trips around town. Wanted to see, they were all cool. Wanted to see who would get in the car with us. Except for one. The person that jumped in the car with us was a young lady who historically would be the most risk-averse population, or one of the most risk-averse populations. So clearly, generationally, there is an acceptance to be able to do that. So again, behavioral things that are changing pretty quickly. And people are starting to see that and embedding that into their programs, figuring out how they make money going forward. Because the reality is that car companies know selling you a car that lasts for 10 years, that's not the business model anymore. The business model is, I want to sell you service where you pay us every month. That's where everyone's going. That's what you do with your phones. That's what you do with software. So you want to get that monthly revenue stream. It's all part of it. And then we even get to drivers versus driverless, which is really what this conversation is about. When you talk to being a driver or what a car is expected to do, there's only 3 basic rules. Stay on the road, don't hit anything, and don't get hit. It's all we ask our cars to do. And unfortunately, we're stupid human beings. We're generally illogical. We make bad decisions. We still can't manage to do that. We, cause billions of dollars in lost, in lost wages and everything else, and injuries and accidents every year because we can't follow those 3 basic rules. So that's what we have to program our robot overlords to solve for us as we go forward with it. It all comes down to technology, which is changing very quickly. And we see basically every 6 months we see some pretty significant advances in the technology. One of the things that's particularly important that we've talked about quite a bit is LiDAR. LiDAR is basically lasers that create a picture for a vehicle. They translate it into the computer and they can kind of tell us what's going on. So 6 to 9 months ago, maybe about a year ago, we were having this conversation. LiDAR would say it looks like there's sort of a flat wall with bumps if I'm looking across here. So it could kind of tell me that there were maybe some people over there, but it couldn't discern depth very well, couldn't discern detail. Now it can tell me that you're wearing earrings that have hoops on them. You've got glasses that are part of what's going on. So the level of detail that they're now able to get to is pretty phenomenal. And that helps give us a confidence level in how vehicles can use that technology to drive us around. So that's really important. There are two basic components to when we talk about autonomous. Not every vehicle is fully autonomous. The only thing that's fully autonomous is a pedestrian walking around. That's the only thing that's fully autonomous. Everything else has to interact with its environment in some way. So we have what we call autonomous elements to a vehicle. Things are sort of baked into the vehicle and you kind of sense what's going on around it. And then the environment itself. And the environment itself can be the infrastructure. It could be a car talking to traffic signals. It could be a car talking to a bridge, wondering whether or not that bridge is frozen or not. It could be a car talking to other elements all along the way. It could be a car talking to other cars. Again, this technology we actually have in place in many different practical applications today that don't even include autonomous driving. Then we can have vehicles that talk to everything else. So our phones now talk to everything else. You can drive around and basically talking to everything else. Anyone remember Pokemon Go? That was sort of all the rage about a year ago. That was your phone basically talking to the world. And people were able to embed advertisements and other elements to kind of stop here, experience the world within the context of your phone. So the technology is there to be able to do that. And it allows us to do a lot of different things. So when we talk about autonomous technology, there are 5 levels, more or less, that we talked about. And everyone sort of thinks about level 5. Level 5 is when there's no steering wheel and everyone's sort of turning around and playing cards with each other. You're on your phone, you're on your computer, you're watching movies. But we've got a lot of stuff that's sort of level 2 and even level 3 already in our cars today. Cruise control is a level of autonomy where the car sort of takes over and we expect it to behave in some sort of way and kind of keep the thing moving. We have a lot of other things that are sort of baked in to vehicles as they go forward. And so as we look at how it affects all the different mobility modes that we have, except for being a pedestrian, which still is the sort of most efficient mode of transportation and how we want to get people around. And I would say that it's the best way to get people to spend money, get them out on 2 feet. Right? It's the only way you get into a restaurant, it's the only way you get into a store. That's the way that we really experience life. All these other things are tools and resources for us to become pedestrians. So that's what we're really focused in on. So all of these have opportunities to be stimulated, if you will, by some level of autonomous. And so these days, mobility is much more complex. 15, 20 years ago, you either drove your car or you took transit because you could afford to do one or couldn't afford to do the other. So these days, our mobility options are much more mixed and broad. Many of you will probably use them in different ways. Many folks on a regular basis who have means and can make choices, drive a car, take Uber, jump on MARTA, and other things in between. So we know that these things are out there. We know that there's lots of opportunities. Our focus for this particular study is one component of this, which combines some of the best pieces of that. Self-driving shuttles, we sort of, as I like to kind of say, they're buses without drivers and streetcars without all the infrastructure that goes with it. So they have the promise to provide us shared mobility at a much lower cost in certain areas. This is one of the reasons why we're looking at them specifically. They have all the technology that's baked into them that I've been talking about all along. So all the sensor technology and all the view screens, and they're accessible so people with wheelchairs can get into them without any problems. And they can get themselves around. And from a cost standpoint, their ability to be able to deliver a per mile change that's perhaps 25% of what it might be to drive a car can be pretty compelling. So a lot of people are starting to look at this as a means to look at how we use the next technology, next generation of technology for our own purposes, and how we prioritize that going forward. So this is the Easy Mile, and there's probably 5 or 6 different manufacturers, and we work with almost all of them. They've been part of we run 2 test beds, one in California, one up in Edmonton. This is part of our one out in California. I'll tell you a little bit about it. So this is 8 to 12 passenger vehicle. This is actually produced by the French. In spite of that, they actually developed a pretty good model. It's got all the sensor technology built into it. You can see it's recognizing whether someone's standing in front of it. It's a low-speed vehicle. So from the perspective of, how's it going to, what happens when it gets into an accident, all sort of risk elements that go along with it, it's not traveling more than 35 miles an hour. It's intended to run about a mile to a mile and a half, maybe 2 at the most. That's where its sort of sweet spot is right now. And a number of people are working with that, us included, to understand how it impacts things over time. We actually have 2 pilots and demonstration projects that we are working on right now. One is in Las Vegas, the other one is in Tampa. Las Vegas went live a couple weeks ago. Tampa will go live hopefully by the end of January-ish. And there's probably some semblance of 41 others that are in operation, mostly on private streets or campuses. These 2 are both on public streets. It's one of the interesting things about it. It's really one of the things we're talking about here. So the promise is there to be able to use technology to help prioritize it. So really it's about, when we look at these things, how does that mesh with your plans and your goals? What are the things that we should be looking at as we evaluate this in the spirit of some of the other conversations you've got going on, particularly in the downtown area? And how does it mesh with other modes of transportation? How does it mesh with MARTA? How does it mesh with potential bike share systems? How does it mesh with some of the other systems that are out there legally, being a pedestrian, and sort of improving that environment as well? So for us, it's just, what's that next generation that's going on? When we talk about, I say, really not a revolution, really an evolution. It really is sort of the next step. It can look pretty revolutionary in some ways, but it's just a natural evolution of mobility going on. So for us, we've been asking people all throughout the day in a lot of our focus groups 3 basic questions. How can technology serve the city's mobility needs? What you all have going on, how do you serve your residents best? How does this play into the mix? How can this facilitate some of your economic development goals, particularly the goals of this group? How can it play that role? And how does this compare against other modes? In terms of choice, are you willing to use it over something else? And then we'll look at it and compare it on a cost basis and other things. So we're trying to collect this information. We're trying to get what people want to know about it. What are the questions that people are asking? And so that as we prepare our report, we will get back to you. In terms of how we're progressing right now, the study is really just a feasibility study. It's a high-level analysis of what some of the opportunities are and what potential routes might this serve, and what the costs may be. After that, the next phase is a much more robust, in-depth analysis. It then turns into what we call a scope of work and an RFP to invite a manufacturer to come in and be able to deliver these services. Services get delivered in many different ways. Sometimes they're purchased vehicles, many times they're leased vehicles, sometimes in partnership with other organizations. Our work in Las Vegas is a partnership with AAA. AAA actually owns the vehicles. Las Vegas is allowing us to use their streets. So it's a lot of different folks that might get involved in that conversation. So it's not just is the city going to buy these vehicles and start running them? Actually, it's often not the case. It's usually a much larger partnership. There's an operator that gets involved. There's an insurer that's part of that, because this is a different kind of vehicle. I'm sure to answer those questions as well. So that's where we are. That's where we're headed. We'll be delivering to you all a report of our sort of initial findings and sort of general recommendations in a broad way, nailed down sometime in sort of early mid-February. So it's a very quick study. It allows you to sort of evaluate this and go forward. So this evening is just an opportunity for us to kind of share some of this information with you, as well as for you all to provide us with what are those additional things that we need to be thinking about. What questions do you have? What are those other elements that are really important to you all? How would you prioritize this type of service? turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Very cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions right now on the initial? I think it's still going to be a splinter on the parking issue, but I think it's part of an overall solution, right? You still have to park somewhere in order to use the transit through the city.
One of the things that we think is really important is that there's probably no silver bullet with regard to parking. Parking and trying to reduce parking is a range of different choices. How you do that, I mean, not the least of which is a good sidewalk, right, which you're all working on here.
The program you have with AAA in Las Vegas, can you explain a little more how that arrangement works?
Yeah. So AAA has been working with, AAA has had, trying to understand what this means to its membership, and so they've been involved at a high level in understanding this. So they got involved with the manufacturer, and they brought us on board from a technical consulting program operations standpoint. They have a separate operator and an insurance piece that's all along with it. So AAA owns the vehicles. They bought them from the manufacturer.
And they're providing free rides or they
Providing
charge?
free rides. Yeah, everything that's going on right now, we believe, is all free rides. And that's sort of all across the U.S. and Europe.
Is that just because it's such an early phase of the process?
Yeah, it's a demonstration phase, a pilot phase. We're trying to understand how that works, and I think ultimately trying to figure out how to monetize it and how to integrate it with the rest of the transit.
And Las Vegas is participating only in the fact that they're allowing it to occur.
They're allowing it to occur. It's very high visibility.
They're not just in any way involved with the actual program itself.
They have a minor role in just understanding from a data side and integration, but otherwise it's pretty minor.
Las Vegas and Tampa are large cities. Are you just in a small part of them? Because I think
Yes.
compared to Chambly, okay, so that's curious to me, just considering, our daytime and nighttime population and how it swells during the daytime and how this could serve that population as well as serving the permanent population, the nighttime population.
Yes.
I'm sorry. So you did not facilitate those programs. You were brought in after.
For Las Vegas, we did not. For our Tampa project, we actually are the prime,
Right.
and the manufacturer is actually serving us on that project.
And
We
is there a
make
group like
rules.
AAA there, or AAA's with you on that project too?
They're leasing vehicles for a period of time. So the transit agency is, in that particular case, the transit agency is leasing the equipment.
We talk about the scalability of these types of vehicles and how, there's such low infrastructure costs, so you could change routes, make routes more frequent because this is very scalable as far as upsizing and downsizing,
Right.
levels of service, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a good question. And, the upside and the downside is you can move it around. I say that there's a downside is that does reduce a little bit of the predictability of routes, but it allows you to move things around because you're not building the physical infrastructure that you would build with streetcar, for example. It can run in mixed traffic. It's running in mixed traffic in Las Vegas right now. It's going to be running in mixed traffic in Tampa. A lot of the other tests right now is running basically on campuses in more confined environments that are out there. So it can do many of those things. The only thing that it really needs is it needs someone to go out and basically map the corridor for it. Create a 3D map all around of the entire corridor so it knows on a day-to-day basis exactly where every curve is. And so then it then can focus its sensor technology on things that change in that area. So that's the only upfront thing that you need to do. And that's actually a relatively easy thing to do. We do that all the time with a lot of our survey stuff today.
So your study is just revolving around Chambly's downtown corridor, or are you studying the entire city?
We have been asked to look at a number of different locations.
Okay, so you've got
We are-
specific parameters that you're looking at.
I would say that we have some non-specific parameters that we're looking at.
Non-specific.
We're asking you all, certainly the downtown makes a lot of good sense. We had a lot of people talk today about the Peachtree Road corridor, with sort of the MARTA station being sort of on center, looking all the way up to Whole Foods and maybe all the way up to Third Rail. That's sort of that entire corridor is, maybe not the entire length, but look at that. We've had lots of other conversations about how do we get up to Peachtree Boulevard, maybe go up Broad. How do we connect through the Greenway connection, perhaps, in a couple other areas,
Claremont.
Claremont, and some of the other park areas. How do we connect down to on the other side, out to the airport?
Yeah.
Some of the things that are going on along there.
Beaufort Highway.
And Beaufort Highway. So what we know is optimally right now where it is, low speed, low stress streets are going to be better for this first phase.
So some of the roads you just mentioned are state roads. Are you talking with GDOT about those state roads, or are you keeping the study strictly to city streets?
Now, right now our focus is really, we're looking at sort of street independent. And we're not going to focus in on any particular road. The next phase will look at some of those other hurdles. The upside is that GDOT and the state has legislation which permits autonomous vehicles to run on their streets. So it's not a legal hurdle anymore. There may be a policy issue, or it just doesn't fit because there tend to be busier streets.
It's very cool.
Yep.
I mean, I can't even contemplate how that's going to work out, but considering the status of the streets we've got now, it's very exciting. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So we're going to be around for a couple more days. So if you happen to have something that comes up that you just like, hey, I'd really love to get the answer to this question, forward it through your staff, they'll get it up to us, and we'll make sure we include that. Try to get those answers for you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. Bob, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think this is a very interesting study. I do think that looking at this technology along with addressing the parking issues generally is something that's really critical for the DDA and for the city to be considering as we move forward. Because parking is the single most complicating issue in every one of these mixed-use developments. So I think it's great that the DDA has engaged these folks to to stay in front of what's going on technologically, and then we'll have some real-time information coming back from our parking studies.
Fantastic.
Well, I do want to ask you one thing, which I don't think has really been mentioned, and that is pick-up and drop-off lanes for Uber and Lyft and those sort of, that's something also that needs to be considered within this, and also, of course, within your role as well.
Right. In pretty much every other street in the world these days.
Would programs like this lower our overall need for parking, or just help parking be more effective and more efficient?
That's a good question. One of the questions that we're asking. This is actually part of a larger research project that we're doing within our company. So we're working with a couple of different communities and clients to study this issue and study parking specifically. That's such a big driver of a lot of things. We think over time, just generally speaking, this piece of technology aside, that we probably use parking more efficiently, but we will still have a need for parking. It's generally how we see things going over time. What does that parking look like? Does it have to be in the same form it is? I would say that we are recommending to all of our clients these days that they strongly consider not embedding parking within their buildings. And they consider parking as separate structures that could be converted or at least adapted to additional development in the future, if they can do it.
Anecdotally, I think if you look at the development patterns of American cities, that the denser those cities get in the presence of transportation alternatives, parking ratios go down. Even in Midtown, where Dan's office is, there on Peachtree Street, the parking ratios average in Midtown is under 2 per 1,000 for office. And out here in the suburbs, it's about 4 per 1,000. So, it's a combination of both things. And I think for Chamblee, as you as density comes, I think it's smart to just be out in front of it. I'm not providing answers, but I'm just saying that the market will also kind of help us direct this.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. It is.
This Willis movie where they had cars going this way and this way and that way and this way.
A little ways from that.
They promised you that, right?
All right, let's move on to old business. We have an arts and business incubator update.
Just really briefly, myself and Laura are still working on the business plan. Myself and Dan, Brian, and some other kind of partnership opportunities popped up, and we're still digging into the gathering some questions we had this long. So it's still a process, but in the coming weeks, we'll hope to have another meeting, get there, have a little more forum, and then make some decisions about where this goes. And I can't remember if I mentioned the last meeting that the county just got its, back in October, just got its allocation from federal government on the 2017 CBD, so they're kind of going to catch up right now too. So we're not behind the eight ball in any regard to that, which is one good for the other.
Was there any further discussion with the gentleman who owns the property?
Oh, thanks, yeah. That's one of the partnership opportunities, and he promised me some figures to perform on to see if this could fit in what he's already doing. That seems to be kind of an easier way to do, but I haven't pursued that yet. I've got a concept plan from him, which is very valuable and stuff, but he's putting together, the already owns the space, or his building, he's putting together some awesome figures.
Nothing we have to approve this time, okay? All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is the Peach Street Station project, consideration of recognition, non-disturbance, and adjournment.
I've done way too many of these on this. Old hats in there.
Evidently, one of our projects, sublease, and the sublessee wants to get a recognition on disturbance of former agreement, which is in a form that might be perfectly fine, going to the entities of the lease, it wasn't a bond lease, but it's some tweaking for the DDA. But I think it's close enough that if it suits the board's pleasure, you can authorize this subject to changes that the chair might approve, and we can get it done in 2 days.
That's fine by me. I'm a little behind on this one. What are we trying to do here? And sorry.
I don't have any background either, but it looks to me like all that is lease of
I can update. There's a restaurant in First Watershed that's coming into the Peachtree Station development, and this is coming from them. So part of this one as well.
But what does it mean? Non-disturbance?
For one of the examples is if for some reason our prospect lost their bond lease with us, the sublessee of the restaurant didn't have a direct lease from us. The flaw in that, of course, is that we bond lease for everybody, so we're entitled to things are structured, so that doesn't work. That's what I'm saying. We have to be careful as a development authority that we don't do things that aren't authorized for development authority, that don't need to do things that conflict with the bond documents, and that don't make us act like a private business, which is not. And when somebody gets one of these, and it's a very good form, I know law firm, but it's a good form between two private parties. It's not such a good form between public property and private parties. So I need to pull a little of the teeth and know like that.
I mean, are we going to be seeing one of these every time we sublease a space?
You know, don't get me started. I see one of these damn things. Everybody seems to want them. And for the requester, it's just filling in a form. For us, it's a little bit of work to gnaw through it. They are entitled to, it's a sublease question. Just say no. But if they request it,
is paying for your time on this?
You know, now we're developer always.
I just wanted to make sure.
This doesn't hurt our position in the deal or anything like that. This is designed to add flexibility we need to be able to maneuver through deals as they come to us. Is that
Well, it's not really we need, it's the downstream. And there's probably financing behind this and such as probably getting a loan for another restaurant.
Sure.
These things are just a part of life these days. It's better to review and make sure it gets right than to obviously say what's wrong. And because we don't want to get in the way of commerce, it's probably better to cooperate.
Is there something that we can add to our overall bond language that basically, heads us off in the past and say, we hear it's an issue, here's our stance on it, don't bother us anymore?
No one would love that better than I don't think it's a bad idea.
would be letter depending who the individual parties are? Okay. We need a motion to allow an independent negotiator to come out, and then for me to go ahead and execute it.
Is this a time sensitive, like when does it need to be completed?
The chairman's going to get a copy of
That's why I'm asking, is it time sensitive?
I can get to the what that is.
Okay.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries. Thank you all. We have the business item that we added under old business earlier. How do we want to title that?
I think the motion was, I just called it Peach Street Crossing part of that whole thing's project.
So you guys are here today. Tell us what it is.
Yeah, so I'll start with a brief update. First of all, I didn't even know this portion was coming up. Our tenants are spending our money without us even knowing it.
We can tell them no.
Well, keep building. So I think we're excited to be here as part of the DDA bond process, showing the success. I mean, we would not be here if it weren't for you, period. We talked about it. We were at a desperate place. And so you guys created a facility, and really without you, we wouldn't be here. And I think it's a great success story for the community. Whole Foods is extremely happy. It's one of their best stores in Atlanta. I'm not allowed to give rankings, but it's in the 2 range out of the 13 or more stores in Atlanta. So it's really robust sales. We know that Taqueria del Sol, their sales are outperforming all other stores. Cook's Warehouse, best opening, they're up 20% from any of their previous stores, and it goes on and on and on. So I think that the market has really, borne out the fact that this was just waiting to happen, and everybody was looking forward to it. So I'm excited. I was spending time there today. It really has become a third place to hang out. It really is. Like if I have an hour between meetings, I'll go sit in Whole Foods. I like to see people ringing cash register, but I also grab a piece of pizza, or I'll have meetings and roll out. And when we had that lightning storm, it was just people lost power. It was packed, right? Nobody had anything in their refrigerators, and it was a great place to be. So thank you very much for all your support. And like I said, we would not be here without you. So we have opened. We're 100% leased. We've got a couple tenants that will be opening over the next few months, but very successful, very exciting, and I think that's sort of bleeding over to other projects. We know that the leasing is picked up at J.R. Conley's project, and so that's great. That is the Whole Foods effect that we all talk about. So one of the things that's come up, and there's really 3 bullet points that Dan will have you consider this evening. I think 2 are relatively minor and really have to do more of that tournament and, this is what lenders need sort of stuff. I think the one that really has borne out the most discussion is the naming convention, and I know that it's been discussed. I wanted to open it back up and sort of present a new terminology. I think we all agree that we bargained for Whole Foods, and that's what we brought, and nobody under any circumstance, including myself, imagine that Amazon would buy Whole Foods. Just never came up in my thought process, and we didn't cover it in our relatively speedy design to make this project go. So here we have a circumstance that wasn't imagined. We're just trying to cover, because what this new party is telling us is that the bond is worth zero to them under its current design, because they feel as if Amazon, maybe not this year or 2 years from now, Amazon is going to put a brand out there, and that will go across the whole 431 existing stores, and it'll be Amazon X, and that'll be some new exciting thing, and we would lose the power. We have lost the power to force Whole Foods to say Whole Foods. If it was Whole Foods Inc., we had some power. Now we don't have that power per our lease. So we're asking that it be acceptable that if the stores in Georgia, and we said 95% of the stores in Georgia, change their name to something other than 365, right? We all agree that that is a different product. But if 95% of the stores change their name, then this store could change its name, and you guys would approve that. And that's what we're asking for. I hope that meets the spirit and the design intent of what we put together here. It's always going to be a Class A center. It's always going to be the best and the brightest, and the success is borne that out. They're going to continue to pour money in it and continue to bring innovations here. So I'm not concerned about that. This is just about trying to make sure that our future buyers understand that this is worth something, and that even if that naming convention changes, and the guys who we made this deal with 3 years ago, maybe y'all aren't here, you're all in different positions, and their concern is they have no relationship, and it may all be for naught. So I'll pose that and answer any questions or concerns. I do know that this has created some angst, and I didn't want to do that. Y'all have been too kind to our organization. We just want to try to clarify it so that we can move forward with this transaction, which is pending.
Well, I have a question, and so you're speaking specifically to the name, but how are we protected from this name change, also allowing the present day Whole Foods to become essentially the 365?
Great question. And if Amazon decides that it's going to operate the store in some way, the 365 is about 28,000 square feet. This is 45,000. So there are no 365s that are larger than 30,000 square feet. So I think that creates a little bit of a blockade to begin with. But the merchandising and all that would have to completely change, right? It's lower shelves, it's no butcher, it's no, none of those things. So what we've tried to do and what we talked about is we want it to be a Class A specialty grocery store. I get it, right? Then the question becomes, well, how do we dictate what a Class A specialty grocery store is, right? We all want it to be Whole Foods, but if Whole Foods doesn't exist, you don't want to be the last Whole Foods if everybody else has got the brand new Amazon bags.
Well, I think that I'm personally, at least, am more concerned with it being Class A rather than having to hold on to the Whole Foods name. I mean, that's, to me, but I'm more concerned about it remaining Class A.
Let me make a suggestion, because we're still working through the options on things that we can do and not do. I'm trying to come to, it's a little bit of evil dancing on the head of a pin. I understand what you're saying, because that's exactly what we're trying to achieve.
Okay.
We don't have the language yet. We don't have the wordsmithing in place to vote something tonight, although we're working on it.
Okay.
What I'd like to do is table it and get something that I can submit to everybody, and that can either be approved. When's your deal done?
So it is 2 weeks is the outside. They actually, it will close into a bit of a hard escrow this Friday. No, it's the 5th, I'm sorry. So that's one thing that we can push, and that's fine. The outside date is the 15th. We'd like to be.
I just have a quick question. So this is really not necessarily y'all saying, hey, we want to make this change. It's really your buyers saying, we're concerned, we don't want to buy without this. And they understand that we're not willing to give up our rights to say, without this Whole Foods store, But what you're asking for is, we're just concerned with if Whole Foods completely changes the name and your buyer is okay with saying, if they come to us a year from now and they want to change it to Piggly Wiggly, we're going to say no. And they understand that, right?
They do understand that. The convention is if Amazon decides to name
Right.
all the stores, that would be different.
I just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that
that's
they're not
true.
thinking that what the language is going to be changed to is anything other than, we're just talking
That's
about
right.
if Amazon changes all the Whole Foods.
That's the way it is currently written. So let me explain to y'all, and we've already spent this money. This is the way that we got Whole Foods here is that we bought in their lease rate to basically make up the gap between what we thought the expectation for their sales would be and what they thought it was. Because when they said, this is what we see, and we're taking into account the fact that our radius includes the airport, which is not fair. And we said, guys, you have to. And they said, well, we can't get there. And this was how we created the gap, right? The cost benefit is we built it for less than a return than we should have, that we could finance. And you guys made up the difference because that lease rate is all they could pay based on their sales expectation. So we've already spent the money. And I think we've given you the class of operation that you're looking for. I think it's a crown jewel in the beginning of this catalyst remake for Chamblee of what y'all always envisioned. And we're glad to be a part of it. We've already spent the money. Hopefully, we all agree we don't necessarily want us to be hurt because some big $400 billion company changes the names. They're concerned about me, and it's just not even on their radar. My concern about me is very much on the radar. So.
Fair enough. Let's get some language down here and figure out what we can actually agree on. But I don't think we can vote tonight, but understanding you got a timeline.
Are we talking about needing to set a date for a special called meeting sometime before the 15th?
How do we do this, Dan?
Well, let me give you a little bit of my background. This is the threshold issue, the name issue, because if that's not satisfactory, then it's not. But if you get past that, there are three other documents that have to be prepared. One is the estoppel that was mentioned before. The other is an assignment document, and the other is a document that will amend some of the bond documents. We've been working on that for a while with counsel for development, with candid, reasonable, and cooperative. So we've gotten to the point where I think we can resolve those other issues, but the documents still have to be created. They're not long documents, but that still has to be done. So the DDA could, as we've done before, tell the chair to agree to those, we approve those documents in advance. If the board members would like to see the documents, we'd like to prioritize this and get them created in the next 2 or 3 days. So maybe if the board would like to meet the first part of next week,
My suggestion regarding these documents, because these are strictly legal documents that you're handling, you don't make a recommendation whether they're valid or not. I don't know that anybody has insomnia and needs to fall asleep reading them, but I would suggest that we handle that like we've done in the past with being authorized to sign when Dan says they're appropriate to sign. That's separate from the naming issue, which we have a little bit of work to do on that. Agreed?
Yeah, I guess just the language.
Yeah,
I mean, I think I understand the spirit of the request, so how much work do we have to do? And if we voted on this separately tonight, then if the rest of the documents don't fly, then this is kind of moot anyway, right?
The rest of the documents would be okay. We're down to the point, I hate to put it this way, but as far as the purchaser and their counsel, I'm not having any confidence in this standpoint. It's pretty much going to be taken to leave those documents are out. But they're okay. I think they'll be okay with our prospect of development. But it's not like we're being a race with that. We just come up with something that works. So I'm not really concerned about transaction documents not working. And so they suggested that the board authorize them to sign when they're ready. I think it's very welcome. But that leaves a threshold issue that the board members have to be comfortable with. And we do have some exact language. Y'all
got some questions. In the current documents, we say it has to be a Whole Foods, but do we define what a Whole Foods is? I mean, if somehow Amazon decided to say, here's our Whole Foods, we're going to keep it Whole Foods, but surprise, 10,000 square feet of it is going to be package pickup for Amazon. You know, and the rest of it's going to look an awful lot like 365. And, I mean, do we have anything, I mean, or is it strictly Whole Foods?
We have the opportunity to fix with this. That's exactly one thing we can fix.
And my follow-up question would then be, you know, going beyond the name, what the intent was a Whole Foods that functions like a Whole Foods. And what we're contemplating at this point is that Amazon is an enormous wild card that could come in and dramatically reshape a grocery experience to look nothing like what a Whole Foods currently is. I mean, I think that's unlikely, but that's on the table at this point. You know, if we're looking at.
So nothing you do here tonight is going to keep them from doing it. They're going to do whatever they want to do. I think the challenge is, as an economic development entity, have you gotten the jobs? Have you gotten the economic catalyst? Have you accomplished what we set out to accomplish? I would say that you have. I think that the ancillary development that's come up around this has been extremely positive. I think the other leasing, I think the quality of the tenants. So I would suggest that if you were saying 20 years ago, we want a Sears, we never want it to be anything different than Sears, that's our definition, just like the cars changing, right? This is going to be, we don't know, and Amazon does give us the ability to be on the forefront of whatever Class A retail is going to be. So I don't think they're going to change the model. They've said as much, but we're just trying to be forward thinking. Actually, we're not trying to be, our living partners trying to be.
Back to Brian's point. What we have now is a requirement to be 45,000 square foot grocery store and or supermarket, operated by Whole Foods Market Inc. Trading Whole Foods Market, such as food. That is a trademark. Trademarks are created and exist as a brand of quality. So we didn't define the quality standards, but if the Whole Foods trademark diminishes in value, if they don't police that mark and make sure that it is reflecting the value, they'll lose the trademark. So, but it is literally true that in terms of what the owner of that business would do, they could call it Whole Foods and say, we don't care about that. That's going to be our grade B stuff. Now we have to do grade A stuff, and we're going to put that out. They could do that. But what's on the table in terms of the trade now is whatever the owner, and right now it sounds like whatever they decide to call that business, as long as they call everything in Georgia that, then they would be entitled to switch to that trade name without our consent. And as Van said, if they tried to call it Piggly Wiggly, which is, I regret mentioning that, and it keeps coming up, they could not do that without our approval. And back to the point that was just made, nobody's got any control over whether they Whole Foods. And it may be, probably was the case, the DDA did not approve this level of incentives for grade B. So it's not just whether it's Whole Foods, it's supposed to be grade A. So maybe our thought would have been if it's anything other than grade A, regardless of what you call it, then the incentive like bricks. Again, that's the legal side. The policy side of it is that we're now talking about making sure what's on the table of this is a suggestion that we get the best of what there is to get. So if we were to change anything about the proposed language, it might be that if they change 95% of the stores to another name, and that name was their highest quality brand, then, and that's the only suggestion that we might make. Then we'll get into a discussion of how do we know whether it's the highest quality brand or not. There might be a dispute about that, but at least we would have something.
We're sort of here and we're asking you to do something that you don't have to do. if the spirit of the agreement was such, whatever you lay before us, we're going to accept, and if they don't accept it, we'll have to figure out another option. So we appreciate y'all's consideration. We know that we're asking a lot. We appreciate all that you've done for us. Please don't take this in any other way. If you can do something great, if we can't work it out, we'd love to finish up the rest of the documents, and then we can say take it or leave it. That gives us that opportunity. But we appreciate everything.
Kind of follow-up question. One of the things that you said in there, there was two parts of the requirement. One was the name of the store. The other one was operated by Whole Foods, Inc. Did Amazon buy Whole Foods completely, and is then the store being operated by Whole Foods, Inc., or has that changed? Okay. Okay.
Remember, the way the agreement is structured now, we don't have to do anything. If Whole Foods has changed ownership, and it's no longer Whole Foods Inc., it's still something that we have discretion to do something about or not do something about. For the time being, we still have a Whole Foods store. There's nothing really for us to do just because they changed the form of the corporation, right?
Right. I'm just trying to make sure I understand implications and the way it's structured.
Another thing to consider is, as mentioned, you're talking about a large, very profitable corporation, I wish it was stock in a long time ago. They act rationally, and they're not going to hurt yourself.
And this is one of their highest stores.
We'll have to revisit this issue, but I think we can get something done here because of the little bit of time to get it done.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Do we still need a motion to give the authority?
On the three.
On the three.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We need to kind of, I'm voting, I'm not willing to give the appropriate vote on the name change.
It's
No,
not-
the three
This is
items.
three documents that would,
The documents.
that would come with Dan's approval. Yeah, it's not.
The name change still has to happen.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's separate, completely separate.
then I go aye as well.
So I think that carries.
Do we need to set a date for a special call session?
We need a couple of days.
I could have it till Monday.
Today's
Tuesday.
is the only Tuesday.
The next Monday.
Today's the 28th, next Monday's the 4th.
All right.
I mean, next week doesn't matter for me, I'm in California all weekend. I'm excited for work. Let me tell you, March and those days.
Well, let's see what we can come up with, because once we have something that we can propose formally, then I think we should set the date. Right now, we don't have anything to propose right now.
I think we should set a date because we're coming into December. There's lots of evening activities that go on in the month of December. If we don't go ahead and put something on the calendar, I think we're fine. We may not
Yeah,
have
it's
to.
got to be Monday or Tuesday, because the rest of the week is.
So, you know, if the 15th is when you said, that's the following Friday. So I don't know, Brian, you want to just,
This Friday is the 1st, next Friday is the 8th, the following Friday is the 15th.
but you're going to be out of town the whole week. So the question is, you know, if Dan emailed the language and you expressed your concerns to David,
I don't think my vote can be counted unless
I know your vote can't be counted, but do you want
Want to do it a week from Monday?
do we
We
have
have a
to?
meeting with a quorum present in person, and we have a board member who is absent from the jurisdiction, it's not voted by phone, only twice in a year.
You can vote by phone?
There you go.
By phone or by proxy? By phone. By phone.
The process.
So what time will it be when you?
Yeah, kind of. Well, last time, yeah, the very first one I listened to, I didn't have cameras yet, so that was 8.5 hours difference. So this is 3 hours.
So are you okay with Monday the 4th? To have the payment date? Are you okay with Monday the 4th?
I can make it.
policy things we have to resolve before we can vote this. I would prefer to wait until the week of the 11th or 12th.
Let's do the week from Monday.
So Monday the 11th?
Huh?
Monday the 11th?
Because Monday's a really
That's
Saturday
fine.
night to have an event.
So 6:30 on Monday the 11th.
Okay.
Do we need a motion to do that?
To set it.
Sure. I mean, you could call a meeting anyhow, so might as well vote on it.
You're not.
You're not back?
I'm not, no, I've got another board meeting that Monday at 6:30.
Okay. well-
I could do it earlier. But from 6:30 to 8:30 on Monday.
Well, it should be, I mean, it's the only one item, right? It's a matter of,
Correct.
it's a matter of just meeting and voting, right?
Where's your meeting? Where do you have to get to from here?
Well, Ginger.
Are you taking it?
So if we got the meeting at 6,
It's 6, I can absolutely make it at
Okay.
6:30.
Let's set the meeting for 5. I mean, let's give ourselves a decent period of time to get the discussion works out. Yeah, I think there's no reason to
I
rush
should
it.
do 5.
yeah,
5:30.
But I don't know. I don't know that.
Okay. Do we need to find that after 6:30? Is that?
No, I think 6 I could do. I'm not sure about 5.
If I run a little bit of less or something.
And
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Motion to set a meeting date for Monday, December 11th at 6 o'clock.
so,
All in favor?
aye.
Okay, Monday the 11th, 6 o'clock.
sorry.
No, it's okay.
Thank you.
Well, I do think it's fine. I can look at it.
All right, let's move on to new business. First item of new business is consideration of Shanley DDA taxable revenue bonds, series 2017.
This is Dan.
This is to the purchases of property kind of contract law.
Okay. Is there a document for us to consider?
There's several things.
Okay.
What's before the board tonight is a supplemental resolution. Under the bond resolution we adopted last year, which we created, a master resolution, history of interest, and months down the line. It's for $1.4 million. It's a drawdown bond, and actually bonds over $4 million. The resolution would also authorize a security deed to the consent, form of the bond, supplemental indenture to go with the supplemental resolution, and bond purchasing agreement with the investment bank. There are a couple of important pieces of paper, but the city owns the resolution, and the other is a certificate of county, those get completed.
Yes.
So, if it suits the pleasure of the board, what we need is a motion, a second, and a vote to adopt supplemental resolution, carry with it, with the
Which property is this related to?
there's two of them.
Yeah, there's 43, 53, Shenandoah Drive.
Well, which is actually 2 properties.
Right.
Yeah,
Got it.
two lots, one property.
I just want to clarify that. These are the same documents we've used in the past, is that correct?
These are based on the same documents that we've done in the past. The supplemental resolution, bond resolution last year was sometimes called parameters. It sets forth parameters and then for the traditional bond application. A resolution authorizes this particular new bond in accordance with the prior deal and contract with the city. Because we have a trust indenture in place now, it's got to be built, the trustees complete for this year. We have to supplement that indenture that we are issuing this bond with these features, which is already authorized. The trustee will be a party to that. The bond purchase agreement is the contract that's based on the commitment letter that we have on that. And it's pretty much the form we used last time. The bond form is pretty much the form that we usually have, and the security deed is pretty much the form that we usually have.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve those documents?
Motion to approve the documents as submitted by our Mr. McCray.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Chair and Secretary, please sign right after the meeting.
All right, next item is the fiscal year 2018 regular meeting calendar. This is,
It's somewhere in here, I saw
Is
it.
it in
Yeah.
there? Yeah, it's here.
Basically, all of these are the normal four
Fourth
Tuesdays,
Thursday,
Yeah.
fourth
except the December.
It's exactly what we did this year. We just need to adopt it prior to January, so if you want to take it, go look and see.
What day is Thanksgiving?
I don't know.
It's the week before.
Yeah.
it's always the 25th. Oh, wait, that's what
So
Really?
the only one we moved is, I've checked this against holiday. And, yeah, anything with the time or the place?
Yeah, actually, on the place, I mean, we seem to be getting more and more people coming to our meetings, and, you know, I mean, they're sitting in the hallway there and whatnot. Is it available to change our meeting location to the Civic Center? They have court tonight?
Yeah, we have to look at, I mean, I could.
If they can, I thought, you know,
The date and change. You're up in there.
I was suggesting we leave it here until the new buildings start coming up, and we can make more of a permanent change.
For the next 3 years.
Until the next time the air conditioner comes out, because at that point I'm done.
And some,
Right.
well, I mean, do we expect that we're going to have this number of your staff here every single time? Yeah. Well, these doors open up wider.
We can put chairs out now.
Yeah, we can do that. We can get those really comfortable chairs that we got.
For the civic center, they work.
Where else, I mean, where else would you go?
Nowhere.
no.
This
It
is
would
the
have
center. There's no other large room, right?
The alternative is changing the date so it doesn't conflict with court.
That's just.
So, you know, like court is every Tuesday.
I don't think it's every Tuesday, but it's twice a month.
It was just a suggestion. I mean, we stay here, we stay here. I know it seems like every meeting we're getting more and more people, and they're having to stand or sit in the hallway.
We can put chairs in there. Yeah, solid for a little while. Yeah. Bleachers.
All right, let's go ahead and have a motion to approve the 2018 regular meeting calendar.
Motion to approve the 2018 regular meeting calendar as submitted.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is the fiscal year 2018 budget review. Is this the,
These are in your packet too, and I'm in that, and Brian, in that discussion. So this is not, that we can continue this discussion to December if needed, because there's a lot of figures in here, but just, so we go, I presented the two funds instead of just like last year, it's the colorful sheet showing the previous year's budget. But then I've also done a little summary, that's the ones that are portrait of each to show what we would expect to get in revenue and what we expect to pay out. The changes happen to, the significant changes are to the increase from, the increase in grant, we're calling city shimmy grant revenue for the debt service, and the debt service has to go up, right?
Yeah, that wasn't in your budget, because we went over, so the $300,000 you're talking about on line one?
No, that's the second one. So that's the operating and general fund owner. That is the grant that we.
Yeah, what is it? We didn't discuss that at all.
Right, that's to cover this concert.
So the city's giving the DA $300,000 to use to pay 7 of it.
Now, that's as it's been proposed, we're still going through city budget, so that's.
I guess we're not assuming any income or any payment from the county for the grant.
I left that out because of all the questions, but the next time we meet, we'll have some answers to that.
Okay.
And it is something, again, the budget is a,
It's
the excitement we
yeah.
can have everything once we know the final number.
Okay.
It seems to kind of balloon the budget unnecessarily.
Yeah, no, that's fine, that's fine. So really what we're talking about is needing to make up, I guess it's a $300,000 payment for the city, yeah, the master plan process, but also it looks like we've got $226,000 in grant from the city of Chamblee to cover the debt service.
And of course, that would go, that, you know, the more we, there's a question about leases, you know, the more we get from there, the better off we are.
Right.
We'll try our best.
So, one thing that when Brian and I met with you, there was $30,000 that was unaccounted for, and it looks like, if I'm reading on page 3, it looks like you put it in a section on site improvements.
Yep. So I put it.
Is that just a placeholder, or is there specific cost? So I don't know if everyone wants to discuss.
Well,
Because that's 30,000 that really have nowhere to go.
So if you look at the summary, there's,
I'm sorry, the third page and the page you gave, second page. Whatever it is.
So in previous budget, we had some
55.120.
special projects, since we moved to the new charter accounts, so there is no special project in that line item. So it's, I put it in that account outlay in case there was some project that needs to be done, or there was a building site.
The only reason I pointed it out is because since it was just Brian and I didn't know if any of the other DPA members wanted to weigh in on if they had specific areas that they wanted that money spent. Because we didn't have anything, and we just said.
I think site
Places.
improvements is going to end up being a really good place.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Wanna
we
make
can
sure
always
you-
come up with something later.
And again, I don't think that, I think we should adopt this in December. Once we get close to the bank on, my figures include the debt service is what the bank told me, so I will believe it when I get it. And I see it down on paper.
Okay.
I mean, they gave this estimate, yes, but I kind of believe it really.
Why are we having this up to $20,000 for the side grants?
Well, that's,
I mean, because we're not awarding all of it, it's just,
Conceivably, they could ask.
They could
yeah,
ask for it.
that's just a.
It's just for 2018, we don't know.
okay.
If you didn't want the
All right.
program, you
You're
could
right.
zero it out, but, we're still asking.
I think the question there is how are we asking them? Are we just saying if someone shows up, we'll give it to them, or are we proactively going? Saying, hey.
That's generally, yeah. Around.
Okay.
So no action needs to occur.
I would suggest not until.
Yeah, I'll contact you.
All right, next item on the agenda is SLX Atlanta Administrative Payment Review.
Yes, all the way back in your packet. You'll see I included the letter, MOU requiring them to submit application in October. They've done so. There's some questions, I think, about did they get the right amount. This being year one, if you recall, the deal was 20% of total taxes owed. And then in the MOU, there are specific amounts that they will always send to city, county, and school districts. So those are, as in the MOU, that's the last section that does the calculation here. So Van, you had a question, because you're right, the tax bill.
The numbers
Well,
in that.
and that's, probably just gonna reach out to the tax assessor and say, hey, here.
It's an issue on their side, not
It could
ours.
be, it could be because they typically on the tax assessor website, they will, if it's a special deal, they'll have a special column, and I can't remember what to call it, but it's special, and it depends. But they make mistakes, they didn't have active, you know, the Chapman property, we own the two parcels, they had one tax exempt under our ownership, they had the other, they did not see the second deed, and so they did not therefore put it in our name. It is now, but so those mistakes happen. So when I talked to Sherman with Dan's office, he had included an explanation of how the calculation was done in MOU. He seems to agree with their calculations as presented. They did use the millage rate as it was assessed in June, but do they need to use the millage rate in force in October? That was the only question that I had, which is,
Because it's two different millage rate numbers.
because it changed in July.
The calculation is supposed to be as of what date? The report from it.
The report is October, due by October. It doesn't have a date in October, just by October.
Well, what they're doing is letting us know whether they have expended any of their abatement. And if I recall correctly, this is one where we allowed them to count the administrative fee as a tax, basically. So they ended up saying that they had not expended any abatement. If they file that this year, then it could be for 2017. And I'm just not sure, I don't think anybody contemplated a change in village rates, but what would count would be what they paid. Which rate did they pay?
Oh, the one that was enforced when they assessed it.
It's in their document,
Yeah.
that rate.
If they wrote a check to the tax commissioner based on millage as of a certain date, then is the millage that check was based on that you're looking at?
So we'll be consistent with that. So given
So does
that,
this not occur, I mean, does this issue come up in other jurisdictions that you interact with, or are we special in some way?
Well, the county administrator.
Special,
is a
but-
little different, so I haven't seen this before, but, and I haven't looked in detail at that document, but I did glance at what the county chairman was doing, and it looked right to me.
so the payment, of course, is lower than it would be if the city redevelopment was assessed this year, close to down. So it's just
Yeah.
12,000.
I wasn't trying to cross problems, I just happened to look at their statement and said, these numbers don't match.
Good question. Like Alan said, sometimes people don't do what they're supposed to do, and they just don't.
Do we need to approve this, or table this till next month until that issue is resolved?
There's something to approve.
The MOU says that the DA shall approve, and we have a different number of this.
We have the right, we reserve the right within our members to come with their own when they have to use it. So we probably should take the fee, rather than this has to take place.
Okay, so let's put it off.
I'm fine with their numbers.
fine, yeah.
Now that they, to them,
Yes,
explain.
we did this for the homestead in October, and I think it was subject to making sure that the map was checked.
Right. Okay.
They're happy with that.
Yeah, I only brought it up because when I looked at the tax website, the numbers didn't match.
Well, let's go ahead and have a motion.
Are we trying to approve the administrative payment review? Okay. Motion to approve the SLX Atlanta administrative payment report.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, thank you.
And they will have 10 days from Austin and letter saying that approved and not 10 days.
Okay.
Look at that. Thank you.
Next item is the facade grant review for Utah 316 Schneider.
And this one, I mean, you've already awarded it, it's just that we have a few steps in there, and I haven't yet gotten all the receipts and cancel checks yet, so we could just simple.
fine with tabling until December. That completes tonight's agenda. Time for public comment. Speak up, tell us who you are, anything, anybody. Yes, sir.
Well, I'm Aaron Hambrick. I want to see the chairman and secretary, and I work with Dan in his office.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
He needs to stop y'all from getting out the door without signing.
See the new Chris?
No.
He's filling some big shoes.
Welcome, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, then we will close public comment. Do we have a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing or approving real estate transactions?
So motion.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We will go into executive session. We are out of executive session. Do we have a motion to?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
I almost fell asleep, not comfortable. First time I stopped all day.
All right.
That's good. Y'all better be a little bit